Hey everybody, this is Perch, and there's been a lot of discussion and videos. I've done interviews. Other people have done videos. Other people have done blogs. There's all this conversation around what happens to somebody's career. I continue to believe it's a tragedy, and it bothers me when you have people who are on top selling comic books, who are doing their damnedest to just do a good job, and then 10 years later, they nobody will give them a job, and they're doing GoFundmes, they're doing basically they're having to go to another industry to make money to keep food on the table. And by the way, you may be, but for the moment, forget about the last 5-7 years. Okay, just forget about that for a second. This has been going on for a while, where you have comic industry professionals, writers, artists, etc., and then it's deemed, hey, you are no longer current style, or you're no longer, somebody who is, we can't use you. You have a dated style. I've told this before. I mean, there was a very aggressive narrative going around Marvel for a while that, you shouldn't give Walt Simonson work because he had a very dated style. Same thing with Ron Lim. Same thing with John Byrne. A lot of people who it's like, well, their style wouldn't really work. And nobody's like saying that these people are awful or like, oh, we can't employ John Byrne. Well, that's not the best example because he did burn some bridges, but Walt Simonson is a better one. Like, nobody was out there going, Walt Simonson sucks as an artist. Or, man, Walt Simonson just so hard to work with. It's too much of a headache to work with Walt Simonson. Nobody would say that. But they would say, it's like, man, I wish we could use him. We've got to find the right project. A project where people are not going to mind maybe a more dated art style. Don't get me wrong. He's incredible. But, his style is dated. You look at it, it's not really reflective of kind of modern sensibilities, modern art. It's like, hey, assholes, you're hiring a bunch of people who grew up and copied Simonson's style and integrated into their own. And you're perfectly willing to keep them employed. But suddenly this guy, the template for a lot of people is too dated. Like, that always drove me insane. There's this guy, Ira. People say I don't mention names, but I mentioned this guy before because every single instinct this guy had was stupid. And he worked at Marvel. If you worked at Marvel, you may know this guy. And he was all these things, simultaneously a complete douchebag. He would be incredibly arrogant to people who would come in and try and get things done. He isolated or alienated creators and people who worked for the company who had been working for a while. He alienated editors. He and added zero value, right? He was supposed to champion digital for Marvel back in 2006, 2007. And as certainly the proof is in the history. Look at how amazing Marvel has done with digital over the last 14 years. It's been incredible. No, none of those things have happened. He was terrible at his job. But he was one of those who I remember did this whole, because they were talking with him and another guy who was from Japan, who was a little known company. Not a lot of people have ever heard of it, called Square Enix. And this Ira guy is going, nobody really gets that. And he used this word, this Jap art style. And he's like, I'm not racist. I'm just shortening the name. Like, again, I could go down. Like, this person was terrible. And then he goes into, we were like, can creators to create original digital art? And Walt had, at that moment, I mean, right around that time, he had done some imagery of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII and a couple of the other characters. Or I remember it was Cloud, but he'd done something that had caught the eye of Square Enix. And they're like, could we get this guy to maybe do some things in some kind of collaboration? And the poor Square Enix people are like completely and utterly confused because they're working with parent company. They're working with Disney. And they're like, we're doing this little thing, Kingdom Hearts. You might have heard of it. And, so we should do something on the comic book side. And the Marvel guy's like, no. I mean, I don't know. Would anybody really get it? I don't think a lot of people in the West really get the big eye art. It's like, this is a guy who begged you to punch him. Anyway, so he was one I remember. So I was like, well, Walt Simonson, like he's a good artist, but like, I don't think anybody really wants to see that anymore. He's more a product of the 70s. I'm like, oh my God, you're off by a decade plus, and you are just anyway, these are the people that give you brain cancer, just listening to them talk. So anyway, where I'm going with all this is that right now, a lot of us are looking at, comic pros who are doing GoFundMe's and can't get work through a lens of a lot of the social interactions and some very toxic Twitter stuff and everything else. But this isn't a new thing. A lot of creators have been in the industry and then got out of the industry. You get Rachel Pollack doing a pretty awesome run on Doom Patrol back in the early '90s, and then DC followed up on that with nothing. And you can hit almost every single name. Wait, what's Jim Shooter doing right now? I don't know, not comic stuff. Does he want to? Who knows? But a lot of these people would like to do comic stuff. Like, you think Bob Layton would be thrilled to do comic stuff right now if you'd ask him. So anyway, you go through all this, and one thing that I think is clear is that what people think that comics makes, and what people think that, both in terms of royalties and in terms of what you could make in Hollywood and everything else, it isn't remotely what people claim. There were a number of comic creators, again, both current, and again, I know a lot of you are going to be thinking about current names. Mags has a GoFundMe out, so you're going to be thinking Mags. But, if you can, that becomes a red herring to some extent, because you get caught up in the personality. Whereas this problem in comics goes back much further than that. And there's this odd aspect of, oh, I'm getting a movie deal, or I'm going to get something that's going on to TV. And then people get very excited. My agent's got me, doing something in television, and that's cool, and, great. But when you peel the onion, the money that's actually coming out of that TV deal is not good. It's not, in many cases, it's not livable money. In many cases, it's not current money. Same thing with book deals. It's like, oh, I'm doing some YA books. It's a very popular thing I hear a lot of people say. My agent has me, I've signed a couple book deals. Very exciting. It's like, yeah, but, let's say you're getting 20 grand for that book, plus some indeterminate royalties after you pay back the 20 grand. Not all deals are that way, but a lot of them are. And I've said this in videos before. There's this term recoupable that a lot of people don't really seem to understand. This is why, my advice continues to be always have a lawyer, somebody who could explain these things to you. But comic books prides itself in many cases on, I think, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, because that's not right, but there's almost this bluff that people do. I'm doing great. Everything's going great. How are you doing? Oh, I am also doing great. Okay, great. We are both doing amazingly great. That's right. That's how a lot of conversations go. And the reality is, yeah, a lot of people aren't doing great. Or, and if people are just honest with each other, if people just said what was actually going on, there would probably be a better state of the industry, because you wouldn't have these people making stupid decisions because they're kind of bluffing their way into mistakes. You've heard this expression. It's an older expression, the keeping up with the Joneses kind of effect, where people will move into a house and the house next to them looks richer and nicer with more toys and a better car, and people have nicer clothes and everything else. So they're like, well, crap, we're going to go into debt because we want to also, we want to look like they do. We want to have the same kind of stuff. Comic books has that problem in a massive way. People who will make dumb decisions in order to keep up with others. But the keeping up with the Joneses fallacy is that in many cases, the Joneses aren't doing well either. They're also in debt. Basically, the Joneses, like they made a horrible decision, got a bunch of debt, and bought new nice cars and nice clothes and everything else, and really kind of built themselves up. And then the neighbor's trying to keep up with something that's a fantasy. And so when I see in comics people make comments about oh, I've got a book deal. Do you have a book deal? Oh yeah, I've got a book deal too. And people don't look closely at contracts. They don't really understand what they've got. And this recoupable aspect has screwed a ton of people. They're like, I got an advance of 20 grand. And they think an advance means, I'm paid before I wrote the book. But that's not everything advance means. Advance also means, in many cases, that you're going to need to pay that money back at some point. And so if you believe that, you're going to basically get this project, you're going to make some money off of it, and then you're going to, the royalties are coming in. It's be this second big wave of cash. Sounds great, but generally speaking, when the contract has recoupable terms, they don't start paying you until they have made 20 grand in cash back. And in some cases, there's not 20 grand of cash to be made. In a lot of cases, actually, the books don't ever make that much. So the money you get up front is the money you get. And even in the money you get up front is often misleading. So the money you get may, in fact, when all is said and done, not actually be paid at the beginning. It may be paid slowly over 3 years or so before the book is fully accepted. That's another big part of it. So when they say paid on acceptance, I know a number of comic creators who think, okay, I write this book, I send it in the mail, they send me the check. But again, it doesn't work that way. You don't just get a check. When acceptance doesn't just happen. This is, and in many cases with publishers, the acceptance hinges upon when they have the cash flow to pay you. So you hand off the book, and they're like, "Oh, this is pretty good. Just going to need a couple revisions. We'll get those over to you in a week or so. We're pretty backed up, and we're going to take a week or two. It takes a month. You get some revisions back. The revisions are kind of nebulous. You go ahead and you make those. You take their suggestions. Maybe you're kind of anxious to get the cash now because Christmas time's coming up. So you make some revisions and you push back. And then it's like, oh, great, thank you. Well, we'll take a look at this and try and turn it really quickly. Oh, but the holidays are coming up, so people aren't going to be. And I've seen this. I've seen this process drag out for. I've seen this process go a year and a half of back and forth. And in many cases, it's like, we want you to rewrite major parts of the book because we have another book that has a similar plot point. So, and so all of this amounts to the cash you think you're going to get may not be the cash you get. Certainly not quickly, not in a, nice, efficient manner. And if you are, if you're banking on all that, if it's part of your cash flow and your plan, you may be screwed. That's the challenge that comics has. It's a business where they age out people, whether they're ready for it or not. They put strange, conditions on things like, Simonson is dated, so let's give him less work. That in turn often leads to, and I've been using Simonson as an example here. I don't know that he's done this, but many other creators, they get less and less work. And so they panic and they lower their rates because, they want to get something coming in the door. So they reduce their costs, and then they still don't get work because, for whatever reason. But now the set price that they previously had of, let's say $200 a page is now $125 a page. And so they're just digging their way down to the bottom. Happens all the time. All of these things kind of amount to the money and the business model of comics is thoroughly screwed up. So when you see people today who are doing GoFundMes and all the rest, again, some people I feel bad for. Some people kind of asked for that. If you're running your third or fourth GoFundMe, then my sympathy is a little bit, a lot reduced, because at some point you're like, you're gonna have to grow up and leave the house at some point. E-begging, you gotta stop that someday. But these are the kind of conditions that lead to that. It's an unhealthy industry. It's an industry where people bluff too much, where there's a lot of kind of dumb thoughts that go around, like certain saying artists are dated when they're clearly not. There's a lot of this mentality that when all totaled up together, it makes it very difficult to be in this business for any length of time. So if you are in this business, you need to make sure you're doing proper things. And one of the best things you can do is get rid of your ego. Get rid of this kind of keeping up with the Jones mentality. Get rid of the idea that you have to walk around fancy, that you're doing great stuff. You're doing a disservice to you and others by doing it. The best thing you can do is kind of dig in, figure out where your value is, have a lawyer, understand contract terms, don't misrepresent to others and yourself. I mean, the person that gets lied to often the most in this process is the creator themselves. Like, I'm doing wonderful. But you're not. and you should be actively taking steps to do different things. And if you did, life would probably be a lot better for you. You'd be things would you'd be putting yourself in the position to fix your problems. But if you never admit you're a problem, there's a problem, or you're a problem, then you're never going to get to those solution steps. It's screwy. But anyway, some things to think about. I watch all this with a kind of a mix of sadness, because I know plenty of people who I think are really good people who got chewed up in the system, unfortunately, or incorrectly, and then assholes who asked for it and got it. I think there's plenty of that, and the combo of the two of these things is pretty negative. That's really where it lands. So anyway, hope that was fun. For I don't know if fun. I don't know if that's the right word, but let me know if you have any thoughts, any questions. It's a crazy business, and if you're a comic creator listening to this right now, and you're going, well, that's not me, then I hope you saying it's not you is because you've properly kind of aligned your career and you've taken good steps to protect yourself and everything else. I hope that it's for that reason, and not for you just don't want to hear anybody bitching. It's like, negativity. You know, that Perch guy is going to put me on blast. How dare he? Don't assume my gender. Sorry. Thanks for listening.